Hi everyone, this is Thor Benson. I'm an independent journalist who's contributed to publications like Sateo, Rolling Stone, Wired, and many others. This is the YouTube channel for the Madness newsletter, so please subscribe to that, and welcome to the channel. So yeah, as I said in the intro, this is the YouTube channel for the Madness newsletter. I'm Thor Benson, and I'm an independent journalist. Been doing this for many years, and I typically focus on politics and tech with a little bit of science. And this YouTube channel will basically be a weekly thing where I talk about a topic for the week or something that's happening in the news. And this week I'd like to focus on what happened in Davos, Switzerland earlier this week at the World Economic Forum. We had the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, kind of talk about how the world needs to be considering a new world order where the United States has turned its back on a lot of its allies. Trump's trying to take Greenland, and all this stuff's been happening. We've had tariffs for the past year. So Europe and Canada are just kind of considering a new path forward, and he speaks to that. So I'd like to play a clip from that speech.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with the greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places a sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades.
So yeah, as you saw there, it was a very intellectual speech. I don't know how much of it Trump would understand. But he talks about Thucydides, the ancient Greek historian in general. He talks about the former Czech president Václav Havel and his Power of the Powerless essay, the greengrocer. He talks about a lot of things, and he's basically saying, you know, we can't keep doing what we've been doing, and we need to reconsider this world order, and, you know, we kind of need to protect ourselves from what's happening with the United States. This is all, of course, going on while Trump is trying to take over Greenland. Over the past year, there's been issues with tariffs, and basically just the United States has turned its back on its allies, and so those allies need to rethink what they're doing. So I'd like to play a little bit more of that speech, and then later on we're going to do a clip from how Trump responded a day later, and then that'll be it.
For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty. They'll buy insurance, increase options in order to rebuild sovereignty. Sovereignty that was once grounded in rules but will increasingly be anchored in the ability to withstand pressure. This room knows this is classic risk management. Risk management comes at a price. But that cost of strategic autonomy, of sovereignty, can also be shared.
So yeah, as you saw, he's really kind of laying out how the world needs to change direction and think about how to move forward without the United States. He talks about how this is a rupture, not a transition. And he talks about how middle powers like Canada need to, protect themselves, but also work together with other countries, that this shouldn't be a world of fortresses. And so, yeah, I think it's a really important speech, and I think it just shows that the world is kind of breaking up with the United States, and, fair enough. But it's going to be interesting going forward, seeing how this plays out. Next, I'll play a little clip from Trump. His speech happened the day after Carney's, and you'll see what he said.
But it's happened very quickly. This afternoon, I want to discuss how we have achieved this economic miracle, how we intend to raise living standards for our citizens to levels never seen before, and perhaps how you too and the places where you come from can do much better by following what we're doing, because certain places in Europe are not even recognizable, frankly, anymore. They're not recognizable. And we can argue about it, but there's no argument. Friends come back from different places. I don't want to insult anybody, and say, I don't recognize it. And that's not in a positive way. That's in a very negative way. And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good. but it's not heading in the right direction. In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports. The consensus was that so-called dirty jobs and heavy industry should be sent elsewhere, that affordable energy should be replaced by the Green New Scam, and that countries could be propped up by importing new and entirely different populations from faraway lands. This was the path that sleepy Joe Biden administration and many other Western governments very foolishly followed, turning their backs on everything that makes nations rich and powerful and strong. And there's so much potential in so many nations. The result was record budget and trade deficits and a growing sovereign deficit driven by the largest wave of mass migration in human history. We've never seen anything like it. Quite frankly, many parts of our world are being destroyed before our very eyes, and the leaders don't even understand what's happening. And the ones that do understand aren't doing anything about it.
So there's Trump. Don't have too much to say about that. So yeah, that's all I got for you this week. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter if you can. And yeah, I'll see you at the next video.